Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Regents.
Good morning, everyone. I'm showing 10 o'clock, so I will go ahead and call this VASC meeting to order. Just a reminder that we are being recorded. This is being live streamed. If we could go ahead and have roll call.
Regent Mendoza,
Present.
Regent Johnston,
She is unable to attend this morning.
and Regent Prasker.
Here.
And that concludes roll.
Thank you. Do we have any introductions this morning?
If I may, and you may say something about this later, but I did want to acknowledge Carlos Wiscombe's retirement. It takes hold on Friday, and so we're going to miss Carla, but we wish her well in her retirement. Part of what I wanted to mention is that I'm very pleased to announce that Dr. Jen Bonzraki has accepted our offer to, I don't think you can replace Carla, but she's going to step into the role that Carla's done so well for so many years. So as we bid farewell to Carla, we welcome Jen to this new role, and I'm sure she'll do every bit as well as Carla's carried us over the past several years.
Thank you, Dr. Mulholland. And yes, thank you, Dr. Wiscombe. You have been very helpful to me as I've taken on this role through the chair of VASC. And I know that you have done a great service to the state of Kansas, and you will be missed, but we congratulate you on your retirement.
Thank you very much.
And congratulations to Jen as well.
I second what Regent Mendoza said. We'll miss you as well.
All right, so our first item of business is to approve the minutes from the January 15th VASC meeting. There are only two of us, Regent Prasker today, so I will make a motion to approve those minutes.
And I'll second.
Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. All right, so our next item of business is to approve the academic year 2025 performance report rubric. Sam Christy Dangermont is going to give us some information on that. I know we've heard some information on this already, so any additional information you want to provide, Sam?
Thanks, Chair Mendoza. If it's okay with you, I will just provide a brief summary. Everything is provided in the agenda. That rubric starts on page 11 of the agenda, and it reflects the template which precedes it, starting on page 5 of the agenda. But as you probably recall, the performance report has 5 components, each worth 20 points for a 100 total possible points. The first component is that math pathways component, offering at least one section of each of the 3 gateway math courses that will fulfill program requirements on campus. Institutions will be asked to show links or some proof of offering that. And then there are questions regarding the plan to fully implement math pathways by fall of 2026. So that first component is broken down into 4 subcomponents, each worth 5 points each. The second component is the co-requisite support for each of the 3 gateway math courses. So they're asked to offer at least one section of each of those. And again, showing links, and there are questions regarding the plan to fully implement co-requisite support for math by fall of 26. And that component is also broken down into 4 subcomponents, each worth 5 points each. Each worth 5 points. The third main component is the co-requisite support for English Composition 1. Institutions are asked to offer at least one section. They're asked to provide a link, and they're asked certain questions regarding the plan to fully implement that by fall of 2026. Again, it's broken down into 4 subcomponents, each worth 5 points. The fourth component is that system-wide English and math course placement measures, implementing those for a soft launch. There are questions that we are asking institutions to answer about that. Again, it's broken down into 4 subcomponents worth 5 points each. And then there's that final piece of the degree maps, effective for academic year 2026. We ask for a semester by semester plan, and this year including using the general education coding guidance that is linked. That requirement is not fully in place for technical colleges because their programs are more technical in nature. They don't require the same amount of general education, but the use of the course IDs, course titles, and course hours included in that guidance is going to be required. And again, that component is worth 20 points each with the possibility of half credit if something is missing. So, if it pleases the chair, I'm happy to stand for questions about the rubric.
Do we have any
I think I
questions?
had some questions. Sorry, Chairman Mendoza, I would like to say something. I did review all the details, and Sam, I appreciate the time that was given, so I'm good with whatever is there. We just had a conversation on if we are asking the universities to follow a certain guidelines, is this the place to put that information in to see if we can assess that? But at this point, I don't want to do any changes, and I would like to move forward.
Thank you, Regent Prasker. I know that there have been many individuals that have put a lot of time into coming up with this template and making sure that it's clear and concise, and universities know what the expectations are, and they've been given time to prepare for this. So I really appreciate all the work that has gone into this. So with that, are there any other questions about the rubric from anyone on this morning? All right, so if there are no questions, I would go ahead and move to approve the academic year 2025 performance report.
And I will second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thanks again for all the work on this.
Thank you.
And just for clarity, this does not have to go to the full board for approval. So BASC approval puts it in place and sets things in motion.
Thank you, Dr. Monholland.
Thanks for clarifying.
All right, so our next item of business is to approve the university programs articulated to the system-wide transfer associate's degrees. Dr. Wiscombe?
Thank you again. This was an interesting board goal last year, so I thought it might be helpful if we research all the board goals that had to do with system-wide associate degrees. And Jennifer's going to show the slides on those. The first one was back in 22-23 board goals, where the board goal was to develop a transfer associate degree in pre-education and then identify at least 60 hours using the system-wide gen ed and the pre-major early courses. And those hours would fulfill the associate degree and then transfer and apply to baccalaureate degrees at the 6 state universities. And we did that with elementary ed, and that was started this year at the colleges. So we're hoping to see that transpire in another year for as those students transfer into the universities. So the next year it was for nursing, pretty much the same thing. It was, focusing on a specific program. And then Blake happened to add 3 more programs to the board goal. So we had pre-nursing last year, and we added business, computer science, and pre-social work to that one. So last year, after the board retreat, the board goal came back as more of a generic goal. So for 24-25, the goal was to go ahead, Jennifer, next slide. There you go. Improve system-wide transfer. And so I asked around, I said, what does the board really want with this one? So we weren't real sure what was the product. So what we're asking is more of a formal approval of the baccalaureate degrees. We have the associate degrees on our website, and we will be adding the baccalaureate degrees, the bachelor programs at our 6 state universities. And I would also note that Washburn chose to participate, and they have added their degrees to all of these programs as well. So I am happy to answer any questions on the programs that were presented.
Thank you, Dr. Wiscombe. Do we have any questions?
No questions from me. Chair Mendoza.
Thank you. This is another goal that I know there's been a lot of work put into, working on improving the system-wide transfer, and it's been going on for a few years now. So I appreciate all of the work again that's been going on with this school. This is a tremendous, this is going to really be a positive thing for our students, so that they are able to navigate the system a little bit more smoothly and avoid some of those barriers that were previously there. So thank you again for this work.
You're welcome.
I think we will, if there aren't any other questions, this is an item that we would need to approve as well. So do I have a motion to approve?
I'll second it.
Okay, I'll make the motion.
I can.
Okay. Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you. And then at our last board meeting, our next item is about the reduced credit bachelor's degree that Dr. Mulholland presented to us at our last board meeting. BASC was tasked with investigating this a little bit more and gaining a deeper understanding about what that entails and what that looks like. So I believe Dr. Mulholland has some information for us this morning regarding the reduced credit bachelor's degree.
Yes, thank you. As I mentioned at the board meeting earlier this month, no Kansas public institution has proposed a reduced credit bachelor degree, but several have expressed interest, and I think several expressed that interest at the board meeting. I think the primary reason for this coming to BASC is before the board could review and possibly approve one of these degrees, there would have to be a change to both state statute and KBOR policy to make those revisions. Both statute and policy define very specifically what a bachelor degree is. So any deviation from that, we would have to make some kind of allowance for that. What we thought would be helpful today and is to talk with some representatives from the Higher Learning Commission. The Higher Learning Commission is the regional accreditor for our institutions in Kansas and several other states. And they have issued guidelines for proposing making application for these reduced credit bachelor degrees. We weren't quite sure how long everything would go with our discussion about the previous two items. So they were going to join us at 10:30, but I believe Dr. Bonzraki, I saw that Stephanie Kramer's able to join us now.
Yes, she indicated she would hop on the Zoom link in just a moment.
Okay, so I'll introduce Stephanie very briefly and turn it over to her when she is on the call. Will you keep an eye on that for me, please, Jen? Stephanie is the Higher Learning Commissioner's Director of Accreditation Systems. Also slated to join her is Zach Waymer, who is the Government Affairs Officer at HLC. What they have is a relatively brief presentation about the process, the application process, and then how it will be reviewed. Those proposals will be reviewed. And then I think they're both willing to take questions from both the regents and any of the others who are on the call. So has Stephanie joined us yet?
Not yet.
Okay. Just as a reminder, the reduced credit bachelor degree, we shouldn't confuse that with the 3-year bachelor degree. It is can be a little bit confusing, but the 3-year bachelor degree is one in which the framework, the structure for completing the program has been modified slightly so that students still complete the typical 120 credit hours, but really kind of on an accelerated pace. That can take place. Many students bring in dual credit or advanced placement credits, which can move them forward in their studies and save some time. They can also take courses over the summer during their the years that they're at the institution and decrease that amount of time. What we're considering and we'll have to learn more about is the actual reduction in the number of credit hours of required for the degree, thus the reduced credit bachelor's degree. Typically, that doesn't fall below 90, and they range anywhere from 90, typically 90 to 96, although I have seen some degrees, bachelor degrees that fit this category that are even over 100 credits. But it's taking some of the electives typically or some restructuring of the program and reducing the overall number of credits required. The
VP Monholland,
yes.
our colleague Stephanie is on the line and Zach will be joining shortly.
Great. I was running out of things to riff on here. So Stephanie, are you on the call?
Yes, I'm right here. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you so much. I gave a brief introduction with your role at HLC, but if you have anything else you want to say by way of introduction, please, I'll turn everything over to you.
Sure. I'm Stephanie Kramer. I'm the Director of Accreditation Systems.
and I oversee our substantive change process. So I've been on the committee to kind of develop a application for the reduced credit hour bachelor program. I've also been seeing these applications come in and kind of triaging them to the liaison. So that's kind of my capacity with reduced credit. I'm not sure if Zach is here yet. But we do have a PowerPoint for everyone, so we can start that as soon as Zach arrives.
Jennifer, can you pull up that presentation? Please, thank you. Stephanie, just until Zach joins us, you said you've been triaging applications. Have you received a truckload or a pickup full, or I mean, is it a substantial number of applications coming in for these degrees?
Honestly, it's been kind of quiet. I think we've only had maybe 6 or 7 applications come in since September, so not a whole lot. I could say that most of the applications we get, the credit hour is somewhere between like 90 to 100 for the reduced credit. And the programs I'm seeing, it's mostly like business degrees and kind of tech degrees like cybersecurity, stuff like that. So we just had our first visit earlier this week, so seems like things are starting to kind of happen. So well, I don't have a ton of information to give you, but
No.
yeah, we're just kind of starting this process and don't really have any kind of data to compare it to because we're still in the process. Looks like Zach is here. Zach, do you want to give us an introduction and then we can start the presentation?
Yeah, sounds good. Good morning, everybody. I'm Zach Waymer, the Government Affairs Officer at the Higher Learning Commission. I've been with HLC for 10 years. And Stephanie, did you introduce yourself?
I did.
Okay, terrific. Since we're running early, that's terrific. Stephanie and I have about 20 minutes worth of content. And we'll go ahead and get started, and then we can answer a few questions, which it sounds like Stephanie already did. And somebody's already driving the presentation, right? I see it up on my screen. Somebody driving the presentation?
I
see.
think Jennifer is.
Yeah, I've got it for you.
Okay, let's go to the next slide. Just a quick overview of what we're going to discuss today, a little bit of recent history in terms of reduced credit hour bachelor's degree programs, and some of the national background on that, how we're going to be reviewing the new application, and then what our decision processes involved with that would be, and also some additional resources for you. So let's move forward and forward. And let me see if I can get this, me speaking out of my face here so I can look at the slides. Yeah, there we go. So let's start with some definitions. What is a reduced credit bachelor's degree? You've probably heard terminology like accelerated bachelor's, applied bachelor's. 3-year bachelor's degree seems to be very common or popular parlance with perhaps legislators and some other folks around the country. But we decided that all of those things could be a misnomer, and really what we're talking about is less than the 120 semester credits. So anything less than the current assumed practice of 120 semester credits for a bachelor's degree is a reduced credit bachelor's degree. And some of those other things could fall into that bucket, if you will. We thought a few things around this. One is it's less than 120, but it could take more than 3 years to complete, depending on who's in the program. And so it's not necessarily going to be a 3-year degree, even though the way we're seeing them designed typically lops off the chunk that would be done in the 4th year. So that's a little bit of kind of our thinking about the nomenclature of what we're calling reduced credit bachelor's degree, and we have a new application and some guidance for that. Let's move forward. Here's a little bit of some of that national background. Robert Zemsky, who's a professor at UPenn, is kind of, I guess I would call him the founding father of this concept. He has an organization called College in 3. Some of you might be familiar with it. Some HLC institutions are pretty active in that thought work around College in 3. And one of the key points he has made about these types of degrees is they don't necessarily save students time to degree, but they probably will save students cost to degree. And I would even say that's an open question, because as institutions design reduced credit bachelor's degrees, will there be a concomitant increase in the price for a reduced credit degree to make up for some of the loss in credit hours? So we'll see. A lot of these things are in the abstract right now. I think I heard Stephanie commenting as I was coming on. We're not seeing a deluge of these applications coming in. We're seeing a trickle. And it could increase and crescendo over the next few years. But right now, we're just seeing a small amount of these come in. And as time goes on, we'll have better metrics and data to share around it. About 10 years ago, we did get an application for a reduced credit bachelor's degree. We reviewed it at the time. We did not approve it. So this isn't the first time we've seen one of these. And other major accreditors around the country have approved, or they already have guidelines in place for reduced credit bachelor's degrees. So this is a national thing. It's not as innovative as HLC is. We were not really the first major formally regional accreditor to come up with this concept. The Northwest Commission had studied it for a few years, which was actually very helpful to us because they shared a lot of their research and findings. So it is happening nationally, but again, it's not a torrent as of right now. Let's go move forward to the next slide, see what's on there. It's been a while since I've done this one. Okay, oh yeah. So federal requirements. So we did engage with the other two parts of the regulatory triad, the states and the federal government. And when we talked to the federal student aid folks and the accreditation folks about this concept, they were surprisingly non-commenting on it. I mean, they didn't have concerns. I guess that's the best way to put it. The federal requirement for accreditor standards for programs is that they have to be of a sufficient rigor. They have to have objectives, and they have to be of sufficient length to accomplish those objectives and rigor. But there's no hard requirement in the federal regulations saying thou shalt have X credits for a bachelor's degree. The state requirements for program approval, we also explored that. Actually, one of the earliest conversations I had on this topic was with our state partners in, I want to say, yeah, it would have been November of 2023, when we had our annual state partners convening with all the state agencies. They come in person, and we talked about this concept. I did some subsequent follow-up on surveying for state statute rules and policies that might be in place with regard to credit hour minimums and maximums, or none where they existed, on bachelor's degree length. Some states had maximums in place, so you couldn't go over a certain threshold. I don't think there were any minimums. There are some pieces of legislation floating around out there. One state enacted a law that would require every public institution to offer at least one program that could be completed in 3 years. And notice I say 3 years, it did not say a program that could be completed in 90 credit hours. So that's the distinction again. We're calling these reduced credit bachelor's degrees. Some states might call these 3-year degrees. 3-year degree doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be less than 120 credit hours. So there are other, as you all know, there are other ways to accomplish getting a 4-year bachelor's degree in 3 years or less. And so the Indiana legislation is not specific to a credit hour minimum or maximum. And then the other thing we took into consideration, and this is still an evolving matter, is what are state student aid organizations' requirements in terms of awarding aid for a baccalaureate that's less than 120 credit hours. And then we also have done some specialized peer reviewer training for peer reviewers that are going to review these new applications. And I want to back up to the beginning and mention that this is not a new standard or HLC rule, if you will. This is simply a new offering in our application menu. So we're not changing our standards. The standard is still that a bachelor's degree is 120 credit hours. We've always had within our assumed practice this this clause that says something like anything outside the typical minima is explained and justified. So we've always actually had a clause within the assumed practice that would allow for less than 120 credit, or less than 100, or less than 60 credit, less than 120 bachelors, less than 60 associates. But again, it says those anything outside of that has to be explained and justified. It's just that we've never offered a specific application for this type of degree program before. Let's look at what's on the next slide. Oh, well, I just got ahead of myself. So this is the assumed practice that we all know and love, because we know and love all of our assumed practices. And that's what it says there. I put in an emphasis at the end. It says any variation from these minimum must be explained and justified. So that's what you're going to be doing in your program application for reduced credit bachelor's degrees, is you're going to be going through the application, and there's going to be a lot of information to explain and justify why you'll be offering a bachelor's degree that's less than 120 semester credits. And let's look at the next slide. B1H, this has come up as a question, which is, so if it's a reduction in the overall semester credits, is there a concomitant reduction in the gen ed? And the answer is, I don't know. It depends on what the institutions come up with. It could be, but we don't know where those lost credits, if you will, are going to come from at this point. So it's not necessarily an equal reduction in gen ed. And again, I added the emphasis there that gen ed is through integrated, embedded, interdisciplinary, or other accepted models that demonstrate a minimum requirement equivalent to the distributed model. And again, you're going to explain, any variation from that is explained and justified. So even now, there is essentially, if you will, an out clause for gen ed reduction. But again, we don't know if the reduced credits are going to come from gen ed or other areas. Okay, let's look at the next slide. Okay, I think this might be the last slide for me. This is just some things we thought about as we were developing the new degree program application, which is 3 possible scenarios. And of course, you know, like with everything, there's probably other things out there that we haven't even thought of, and that will come up. So the first scenario would be that you or an institution is offering a new bachelor's degree program that's never offered before, and it's doing so in a reduced credit format. So that's going to be a completely new kind of animal for the institution, and we're going to see a new application for it, and you haven't done it before. The second one is you currently offer this degree program at 120 credits, and you're going to offer it in the reduced credit format. So that's going to be an application for the new reduced credit format bachelor's degree program that you're currently offering. So it's going to be a new bachelor's degree program, but you're also offering one at the 120 hours. And then the third one is, what is this one? An institution currently offers a bachelor's degree program at your typical length, at our typical length of 120 credits. Now you're going to cease offering that program and only offer the program in a reduced credit format. So you're going to mothball or get rid of the current one and only offer the new one. And so the point of this is each of the scenarios that I just went through, and Stephanie's going to talk a little bit more in detail about the review and decision-making process. Each of these scenarios will probably have a little bit different type of a review process involved with them. And let's look at the next slide. Yeah, okay, great. So that's, I'm going to pause and let Stephanie drive from here on reviewing the application and decision-making.
Thanks, Zach. So next we're going to discuss reviewing the application. Next slide, please. Thanks. So some of the standard application elements, we tried to make the reduced credit hour very similar to our program application. So some of the characteristics that we'll want to capture in the reduced credit hour application are CIP code, the level, the credit hours, the target audience, and then some of the modality. Is it contractual? Is it competency-based? Stuff like that. We also want to know the institution's history with the programs. Do they offer this in a traditional credit format? You know, do they offer programs that are similar? Stuff like that. Next slide. So some of the elements of this new application, the questions are kind of the same. They're pretty standard from our program application. But they should be reviewed as related to a reduced credit format. Questions have been added to highlight the importance of review and rigor related to considering approving a program in this format. So if you do look at the reduced credit application, I think you'll notice it's very similar to the program application, but there are some additional questions that are trying to get at, you know, why you want to offer this as reduced credit? What's the audience? Does the audience know the difference between the different formats and stuff like that? Next slide. So some of the things we were going through the application, we wanted to focus on. One of the things was planning. We wanted to have a rationale, especially related to mission and student populations. We wanted to know the market for this, you know, what's the demand? And what are the post-graduation opportunities for these students? Is there a licensure that they get at the end? If not, do they need a traditional credit, stuff like that. We also want to focus on curriculum and rigor. What are the program learning outcomes? What's the assessment with the reduced credit hour program? And then we also wanted to focus on transparency to students. What are some of the differences between the programs? What are some potential consequences for opting for this format? Like I said, is there a licensure that they're not going to get at the end versus the traditional credit hour? And then some intentional communication strategies with students. How transparent are you with the differences between these programs, and letting students know what they're getting into with doing a reduced credit hour program. Next slide, please. So you'll notice on our website, we created, along with the application, some guidelines. And here's the link to review that document, but it's kind of information related to reduced credit and kind of different scenarios that are possible. We didn't come up with every scenario, but we kind of came up with some general guidelines to help institutions as they fill out this reduced credit hour application. So these guidelines are intended to be examples of evidence for each core component. It's not an exhaustive list, but it is some examples. Some may not be relevant to a particular situation or at this moment in time. It's intended to be used as a guide both at the time of approval, during the substantive change process, and during ongoing review. So I think that the guidelines is very helpful for institutions to review along with that reduced credit hour application. So next we're going to talk about kind of the review process and the decision process related to reduced credit hour applications. So the review process is that when an institution submits their first reduced credit bachelor application, it will go to a change visit. And so maybe if they get approved and the next one they submit, maybe that would go to like a change panel or something that's a shorter review, virtual. But for right now, we're sending these all to a change visit. And so we'll have experienced peer reviewers that are trained to review these types of applications. The average time frame to get an application approved with a change visit is about 8 months. And a visit will last about a day and a half, and it'll consist of 2 people on a team, and that includes a team chair. So once the visit happens, we get a recommendation from the team. The application, the recommendation, and institutional response is what we call a full read, are sent to the Institutional Actions Council, which will take final action. IAC can support, alter, or overturn the recommendation. If the final decision is denial, institution can resubmit an application at any time. And the institution cannot appeal the IAC decision. So they just have to resubmit an application if it gets denied. Just some resources for everyone that I've gotten some feedback and people have said that they're really helpful. We have 3 webinars on our website that kind of go over some different areas of substantive change. So if you wanted to learn more about like an overview, or you want to get more in depth on some applications, you can watch these webinars. We don't talk about reduced credit in these, but these are good, I think, resources for anyone who's kind of not familiar with substantive change. And then lastly, you can always reach out to your HLC staff liaison when you are thinking about getting a reduced credit hour approved. I think it's really helpful for them to know how to plan and to kind of know what's coming from each institution. So I think those are all really great resources for anyone interested in reduced credit hour. And if you have any questions at this time, we can try to answer them. Like I said before, we don't have a lot of data on reduced credit hour. It's kind of new to us. So we can kind of do our best to answer any questions you might have.
Hey, Stephanie, I want to raise a point of clarification on the application denial. So once that goes to IAC, and we'll just pretend like it gets denied, you resubmit the application. It can be resubmitted for the same degree program, correct? They just have to
Right.
restart the process. Gotcha.
Right.
Okay, thank you. All right, folks, any questions or reactions for Stephanie and I?
For any questions, I would just ask that individuals just kind of state who you are before you ask a question, but we would open it up now to any questions from the group.
Chair Mendoza, I have a question, and this is Neelima Paraskar. For the reduced credit hours, have we connected with any employers that and see how they perceive the value of these in the industry yet? Or is it just coming from the academic side at this point?
Yeah, that's a good question, and keeps coming up in these forums. We in the application, we believe that that's the institution's responsibility to interact with their employer partners on such issues. Stephanie, if I remember correctly, we're getting cybersecurity on these, right? Like that seems to be a hot topic for reduced credit degrees and
like business degrees too.
business. Okay. And like with cybersecurity, we know that there's a huge, like with many professions right now, there's a
Even
huge,
micro credentials are good.
right. There's a huge national labor shortage. Last time I checked, like with cybersecurity, I think there were, 750,000 open positions. So some of these degree programs might be more amenable to employers that are having labor market shortages and would like to have talent, in and through the pipeline quicker. But has HLC done any direct employer engagement on this outside of the work we're doing with our new credential lab, which is more about short-term and non-traditional credentials? I don't think we've really done that level of engagement with the employer community, but would always be interested in hearing from our accredited institutions what you're hearing from your employers.
Yeah. I definitely will add that if it's specific to certain areas within technology, as such, the technology landscape is changing. Midwest is a little behind, as we probably already know, specifically in the cybersecurity space. I want to understand which employers are looking for what skills that they are going to acknowledge this reduced bachelor's degree. But I also want to see if we can evaluate if there is a possibility, look at ways that registered apprenticeships are working right now, because employers are teaching these courses or methodologies to work the cyber because it's so constantly changing. The employers are feeling the first heat of what it takes to develop those skills. And so I want to put a suggestion for our committee to even look into a 1-year registered program could be something that we could add into these areas when we are having those conversations with the industry. But at this point, if it's specific to certain areas, I think the sooner we bring the industry in to this conversation, the more helpful it is for both students and the industry to be aware of these changes.
Yeah, and I have a question. Is the audience today both community college and university CAOs, or are we just universities here, or a mixture of both?
Have both online.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear an answer.
We have both online.
You have both. Oh, okay, great. And I just wanted, Stephanie touched on this in her content, which is you have to keep in mind that programs like this are not going to be amenable for every type of field. I'll mention, those fields that require programmatic accreditation to get licensed and employment. That's not always going to work. So you're going to have to think about your calculus with the programmatic accredited areas as well. Yeah. Anything else?
Zach, Rusty Monholland. I had a question about the nomenclature. If we have a 60 credit hour associate degree and a 120 credit hour bachelor's degree, why didn't we come up with a different name for this degree? Was that the nomenclature? What was the extent of that conversation about what to call this?
Yeah, well, we did. We're calling it reduced credit bachelor's degrees. So this question comes up, and not just in relation to three-year or reduced credit bachelor's degrees. The question comes up from our accredited institutions. Do you require us to call ourselves X as an institution? Do you require us to call our program Y as a program, etc.? This tag, can we have this tag on this degree, etc.? We don't have, as probably most of you know, we don't have standards that are that prescriptive, that require naming conventions for the name of your institution, naming conventions for the name of your degree programs, etc. So we do think that probably as these program applications are developed, submitted, and eventually approved, I do believe that some of these will make it through the approval process. That institutions will call these programs what they're comfortable calling those programs and what makes sense in their institutional mission, context, their types of students, their employer partners, etc. So we don't have a rule on that. And for right now, we're calling them reduced credit bachelor's degrees.
And I assume this is an issue with other states too. We likely will have to seek a change in statute because the state statute defines what a bachelor's degree is. And I don't know, adding the adjective reduced credit, gives us the liberty to just move forward without that change.
That's right, Rusty. So for example, Colorado, one of our fellow states, of course, is grappling with that same issue. They have a statute level language around what a baccalaureate is. They have been very early out of the gate and enthused about this concept, but per their Attorney General's opinion, in order to move forward, they'll have to have some legislation to change the statute at the state level. And it's a good point you bring up here, which is the states have this regulatory and approval role because you're all your own separate constitutional sovereign entities. So each state's going to have to decide on its own what their approach is to this, and that means the states, which are have HLC accredited institutions, the states have their institutions and authority over them as well. The institutions will have to seek approval and show approval, or show that approval is not required from the state for this type of program as you move forward. And Stephanie, my colleague here, is an expert in how those things work. So if you ever get into the nitty-gritty of an application and you're wondering how to show approval from your state or show that the state does not require approval, Stephanie knows more about that.
Right, yeah, we always need state approval with any program application.
What else?
Judd McCormick here at the Board of Regents. I have a question. I guess I want to piggyback off of Dr. Mulholland on that. I'm the reporting associate director of reporting here with the Board of Regents. Has HLC thought about maybe kind of championing a name like junior baccalaureate or something that maybe doesn't have a less than or not as good as or negative kind of connotation as maybe what it kind of sounds like now, that kind of help champion with the states to help kind of push through a definition?
Yeah, I mean, it's part of my role as government affairs officer. We like to collaborate and advocate with our state partners. So if a state's coming up with an idea around this, I would certainly be open to talking with them about it. I think the point I was trying to make was that our standards aren't prescriptive, so we're not going to say to the institution, thou shalt call it X. States, excuse me for a second. Let me just finish this point. Obviously, a delivery has arrived. The states have the authority to come up with these nomenclature ideas on their own that are outside of HLC's purview. Stephanie, do you want to add anything to that?
I know we kind of talked about the issue of naming the reduced credit hour something else, but I think we kind of decided to kind of maybe keep it kind of more general, and maybe states could kind of come up with an idea. So we definitely know it's kind of an issue that states are kind of wrestling with right now. Any other questions?
So I have a question. At our last board meeting, we heard about, we approved a program, a Master's of Science in Dosimetry. And as we were receiving that presentation, we learned that students typically that would go through that path, or that they foresee going through that path, would start with a radiation therapy certificate, I believe. And then in order to go on to get their master's, they would have to complete additional courses and get a bachelor's in medical imaging to be able to go on to that master's of dosimetry. So my question is, have you seen any applications come through where you take maybe like a 3-year program? And I know it's not the same reduced credit in 3-year, but where you take a 3-year certificate type of program, and universities or institutions wanting to change that to a bachelor's degree so students can go straight from that into their master's. Have you seen any of those, or is there any reason why that may not be workable?
I'm not exactly sure. I don't think I've really seen anything like that where it's kind of certificate to bachelor's. I think it's something, if you were interested in, you'd probably have to talk to your HLC staff liaison first.
That's what I would recommend for sure. I suspect that the liaisons have probably seen that model more closely with their portfolio of institutions than, say, Stephanie and I do in our role. So Diana, that's who I would check with. Who I'm assuming you know who your HLC staff liaison is. If not, we can connect you.
Okay. Yeah, I'll get with the academic affairs staff.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Zach and Stephanie? I would invite any institution representatives online that have questions to ask questions if you have them. Okay. So my final thought on this would be, Zach and Stephanie, would it be okay to share this presentation with our institutions? That way they can facilitate conversations on their campuses on this topic.
Yeah, absolutely. Just if you could please format it into PDF and don't share it with the notes view. I don't think Stephanie and I were using notes view today anyway. But yes, absolutely share it. And we look forward to exploring this issue together as it becomes less abstract and evolves.
Thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely, my pleasure.
Jennifer, would you mind preparing that presentation to send out to institutions?
Yes, of course.
All right, thank you so much.
Mhm.
All right, are there any other matters to come before the committee this morning? Okay, I'm hearing none. So with that, our next meeting is February 12th in Topeka. So I will make a motion to adjourn if we don't have anything else to come before the committee.
I can second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you, everyone.